The massive warship hung in space like a deadly predator, its black hull absorbing nearby starlight. Inside, Commander Kithrax stood at the bridge window, her tall figure casting a long shadow across the polished floor. Her scaled skin shimmered with a metallic gleam, and her amber eyes narrowed as she studied the small planet below. Another illegal settlement, Commander, her second-in-command reported, voice low and respectful. Single structure, minimal defenses. Kithrax's reputation had spread across 3 star systems. They called her the Silence Bringer, the one who made problems disappear. Her own people, the Valorians, were proud of her efficiency. Other species simply feared her. In 15 years of service, she had never failed to complete a mission. Life signs, she asked, her voice carrying the natural growl all Valorians shared. Just one, Commander. Appears to be human. Thrax's head tilted slightly. Humans were relatively new to space travel, and meeting them here, in a restricted sector, was unusual. Most illegal settlements housed groups of smugglers or pirates. A single human was different. "Prepare my shuttle," she ordered. "I will handle this personally." As her ship descended through the atmosphere, Kithrax reviewed what she knew about humans. Their species was physically weak compared to Valorians, who had evolved from apex predators. Yet somehow, humans had managed to spread across multiple systems in just a few decades, making trade deals and forming alliances with surprising speed. The shuttle landed near the illegal structure. Thrax had expected a hidden base or a smuggler's den. Instead, she found herself staring at what appeared to be a restaurant. A hand-painted sign hung over the door. Chen's Cosmic Cuisine. All species welcome. The door chimed as she pushed it open, ducking her head to enter. The interior was warm and filled with delicious smells she couldn't identify. Small tables were scattered around, each with carefully arranged flowers in simple vases. Music played softly from hidden speakers. Behind a counter, a human male looked up and smiled. He was short and round-faced, with gray streaks in his black hair. His apron was stained with various colors, and he held a large spoon in one hand. "Welcome," he called out cheerfully. "I'm Marcus Chen. Table for 1. Thrax stared at him. Most beings cowered at the sight of a fully armed Valorian warrior. This human acted as if she was any other customer. "This is a restricted sector," she growled. "Your presence here is illegal." Marcus scratched his head with the spoon. "Oh, that's what those signs meant. My translator must have glitched. I thought they said restricted as in exclusive location. Perfect for a restaurant, you know." Thrax's claws flexed. Was he mocking her? "I am Commander Kithrax of the Valorian Defense Force. I am known as the Silence Bringer." Silence Bringer. That sounds lonely, Marcus said, already moving to prepare something in his kitchen. "You must be hungry after coming all this way. Please, sit down. I just finished making my special curry. It's so spicy most species can't handle it, but I bet a Valorian could appreciate it." The sheer absurdity of the situation made Kithrax pause. She had come to shut down an illegal settlement, and instead, this human was offering her food. She should arrest him immediately. She should call her ship. She should. The smell from whatever he was cooking made her mouth water. Valorians were famous for their love of intense flavors, as their predator biology could handle extreme spices, and it had been a long time since she'd had anything but standard military rations. 10 minutes, she found herself saying. "You have 10 minutes to explain yourself." Marcus grinned, already spooning bright red curry into a bowl. 10 minutes is all I need. Trust me, Commander, this meal is going to change your life." He had no idea how right he was. Kithrax sat at the small table, her combat armor looking strangely out of place among the cheerful decorations. She watched as Marcus Chen worked in his kitchen, moving with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years perfecting his craft. "You know," Marcus said as he added final touches to the dish, "you're my first Valorian customer. I've served 17 different species, but never one of yours. Because this sector is restricted, Thrax reminded him, though her eyes remained fixed on the bowl he was preparing. The aroma was unlike anything she had encountered in her military career. Marcus placed the curry in front of her. Steam rose from the deep red sauce, and pieces of what looked like meat and vegetables peeked through the surface. This is my nuclear fusion curry. Most species can't handle even a small bite. I had to sign medical waivers on 3 different planets just to serve it. Thrax picked up the spoon, her clawed hand making the utensil look tiny. She was a warrior, feared across systems. She wouldn't be intimidated by food. The first bite hit her like a plasma blast. Her eyes widened. Heat exploded across her tongue. But it wasn't just heat. There were layers of flavor she couldn't even describe. It reminded her of the hunting feasts from her childhood, before she joined the military, when her family would gather to share meals after successful hunts. "Well?" Marcus asked, watching her reaction with obvious delight. Thrax took another bite instead of answering. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the bowl was empty. "Impossible," she finally said. "How did you make this?" Marcus beamed. Family recipe, passed down through generations. Had to modify it for space ingredients, of course. But the secret is love. Love cannot be an ingredient, Thrax stated flatly. It is an emotion, an inefficient one. That's the most Valorian thing I've ever heard, Marcus chuckled. Here, let me show you how it's made. Maybe then you'll understand. Before Thrax could object, Marcus had guided her to the kitchen area. He handed her some vegetables and showed her how to cut them. Her warrior's precision made her naturally good at it. "See, you're a natural," Marcus encouraged. "Now, taste this sauce and tell me what you think it needs." Thrax hesitated. In 15 years of military service, no one had ever asked for her opinion on food. Food was fuel, nothing more. She tasted the sauce. More heat, she decided. And something is missing. Something sharp. Exactly. Marcus clapped his hands. Your people evolved as predators, right? You naturally crave intense flavors. Here, try adding this. As they cooked, Thrax found herself talking about her childhood hunting trips. Marcus shared stories about his restaurant on Earth and how he'd always dreamed of cooking for different species. Why here? She asked finally. Of all places, why build in a restricted sector? Marcus shrugged. Honestly. The view. Look outside. Thrax turned. Through the restaurant's wide windows, she could see twin moons rising over purple mountains. Stars sparkled in the darkening sky, and local wildlife called in the distance. Beautiful, isn't it? Marcus said softly. Some things are worth breaking rules for. Thrax should have arrested him right then. It was her duty. Instead, she found herself saying, I will need to inspect this establishment regularly to ensure compliance with other regulations. Marcus's eyes twinkled. Of course, Commander. I wouldn't want to violate any other rules. Same time next week. I'll teach you how to make dumplings. For the first time in years, Thrax felt something unfamiliar tugging at the corners of her mouth. Not quite a smile. Valorians didn't smile, but something close. Same time next week, she agreed. 3 weeks had passed since Commander Thrax's first visit to Chen's cosmic cuisine. Her inspection visits had become more frequent, though she carefully logged each one as ongoing investigation of potential security threats. Today, she arrived to find Marcus teaching a young Zentarian how to use chopsticks. The jellyfish-like alien was struggling to grip the utensils with its tentacles. Ah, Commander, Marcus called out cheerfully. Perfect timing. I'm just finishing up here. Thrax waited patiently, observing how Marcus showed infinite patience with his customer. When the Zentarian finally managed to pick up a piece of food, its bioluminescent patches glowed with pride. After the customer left, Marcus turned to Thrax with a knowing smile. Ready for today's lesson? We're making something special, Earth-style hot pot. Thrax moved to her usual spot in the kitchen. She'd grown comfortable here, though she'd never admit it. Her clawed hands, once used only for combat, now knew their way around cooking utensils. "Tell me," she said as they prepared ingredients, "why do you spend so much time teaching others? It is inefficient. They could simply eat the food you prepare." Marcus chopped vegetables as he answered, "Food isn't just about eating, Commander. It's about connection, sharing, joy. Joy." Kithrax repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. "Valorians do not experience joy. It is a weakness." Marcus stopped chopping and looked at her directly. "Is that what they taught you in military training? That feeling good makes you weak?" Thrax bristled. "Our strength comes from discipline. Control. We are warriors. Yet here you are, learning to cook," Marcus pointed out gently. "Is that weakness?" Before Kithrax could answer, the kitchen timer beeped. Marcus pulled out a tray of freshly baked cookies, another Earth dessert he'd been experimenting with. "Here," he said, offering her one. "Try this." Thrax took the cookie carefully. It was warm and soft, nothing like the protein bars she usually ate. The sweet taste reminded her of a rare fruit that grew near her childhood home. "When I was young," she found herself saying, "before military training, I used to climb trees to reach those fruits. My mother said it was undignified. But I remember feeling something when I reached the top. That feeling," Marcus said softly, "that was joy." Kithrax stared at the half-eaten cookie. "We are taught to suppress such emotions from an early age. A warrior must be focused, controlled. You know what I think?" Marcus started preparing the hot pot. "I think the strongest warriors are the ones who can be both. Strong and joyful. Disciplined and happy." As they cooked together, Marcus told stories about Earth's different cultures, how food brought people together across boundaries. He spoke of festivals where entire cities celebrated with feasts, of family gatherings where arguments were forgotten over shared meals. Thrax listened, asking questions about these alien concepts. She learned about something called potluck dinners, where everyone brought food to share, and birthday cakes that celebrated another year of life. Next week, Marcus announced as their session ended, "I'm going to teach you something very important." "Another Earth dish?" Thrax asked. "No," Marcus grinned. "I'm going to teach you how to laugh." Thrax's spine stiffened. "Valorians do not laugh." "Yet," Marcus winked. "Valorians don't laugh yet." As Thrax walked back to her shuttle that evening, she found herself thinking about joy, about laughter, about all these strange human concepts. She had come to this planet to silence an illegal settlement. Instead, she was learning things no military training had ever taught her. In her ship's log, she wrote, "Continued surveillance required. Subject displays concerning influence on local culture." She didn't mention that the concerning influence had already changed her more than she cared to admit. "Today's the day," Marcus announced as Kithrax entered the restaurant. "We're going to make you laugh." Thrax's expression remained stern. "I have studied human behavior. Laughter cannot be forced." "True," Marcus agreed, tying his apron. "That's why we're not going to try to force it. We're just going to cook something complicated and see what happens." He led her to the kitchen, where he had laid out numerous ingredients and cooking tools. "We're making something called soufflé. It's one of the trickiest dishes in Earth cuisine." Kithrax studied the ingredients with her usual military precision. "What makes it difficult?" "Everything," Marcus chuckled. "Timing, temperature, technique. It all has to be perfect. Even experienced chefs mess it up sometimes. But that's part of the fun." They began working together, with Marcus guiding Kithrax through each step. Her clawed hands were surprisingly gentle as she separated egg whites from yolks. "Now fold the mixture carefully," Marcus instructed. "Like you're handling explosives, but gentler." Kithrax frowned in concentration. "Combat training did not prepare me for this." As she worked, Marcus told jokes and funny stories from his years of cooking. Thrax didn't laugh, but she listened intently, trying to understand what humans found amusing. Then everything started going wrong. First, Thrax folded the mixture too vigorously, sending clouds of flour into the air. White powder settled on her scales, making the fearsome warrior look like a ghostly version of herself. "Don't move," Marcus said, trying not to laugh. "You look like a powdered donut." As Thrax reached for a towel to clean herself, she knocked over the bowl of egg whites. In trying to catch it, she slipped on the spilled mixture. Her warrior reflexes kicked in, and she performed a perfect combat roll, right into the spice rack. Containers of spices rained down. Red pepper, turmeric, and cinnamon created a colorful explosion around her. Through it all, Thrax maintained her dignified expression, even as she sat in a mess of eggs and spices, covered in flour. Marcus couldn't help himself. He burst out laughing. "This is not amusing," Thrax stated, but something strange was happening to her face. The corners of her mouth were twitching. "Oh, but it is," Marcus wheezed between laughs. The mighty silence bringer, defender of restricted space, brought down by eggs and flour. Thrax opened her mouth to protest, and then she saw her reflection in the kitchen's metal surface. A mighty Valorian warrior, covered in food, looking like a child's art project gone wrong. Something bubbled up inside her, a strange feeling starting in her chest and moving upward. She tried to suppress it, as her training had taught her, but it was too strong. The sound that came out of her mouth started as a snort, then grew into a chuckle, and finally became a full, rich laugh that echoed through the restaurant. Marcus froze in surprise, then grinned widely. "You did it. You actually laughed." Thrax's laugh gradually subsided into something else, her first real smile. I feel strange." "Good strange or bad strange?" "Good," she admitted, still smiling. "Like winning a battle, but warmer." The moment was interrupted by a harsh beeping from her communicator. Thrax's smile vanished as she read the message. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, noticing her sudden change. "My superiors," Thrax said grimly. "They're demanding an explanation for my repeated visits to this sector. They've been monitoring my logs." She looked at Marcus, her expression serious again, but with a hint of something new, concern for a friend. "They're coming here," she said. "Tomorrow." The kitchen fell silent, save for the gentle drip of egg whites hitting the floor. Their peaceful cooking lessons were about to become a lot more complicated. 3 high-ranking Valorian officers sat at Marcus's best table, their combat armor making his cheerful restaurant feel like a military court, which, Thrax realized, it had essentially become. "Commander Thrax," General Varrock growled, his scales darker than hers with age and rank. "Explain why you failed to eliminate this illegal settlement." Thrax stood at attention, her back straight. She could feel Marcus watching from his kitchen, unusually quiet. "Sir, I determined that direct action was not necessary. The establishment poses no security threat." "No threat." The general's claws scraped against the table. "You were seen cooking." Cooking. The feared silence bringer, playing with food like a hatchling. The third officer, Admiral Tar, spoke up. "The security footage is disturbing. You were recorded, laughing." The word hung in the air like a weapon. Thrax felt her new smile trying to emerge, but she forced it down. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Generals, Admiral," she said firmly, "before you pass judgment, I request you try the food." The officers exchanged shocked looks. "You dare to," General Varrock began. "According to Military Code Section 47B, Thrax interrupted, "an accused officer may present evidence in their defense. This is my evidence." Marcus, who had been listening, immediately understood. He disappeared into his kitchen and emerged minutes later with 3 bowls of his nuclear fusion curry. "What is this?" Admiral Tar demanded. "This," Thrax said, is why I didn't destroy this place. Try it. If you still wish to court-martial me afterward, I will accept my punishment." The officers looked at the bowls suspiciously. General Varrock went first, taking a small bite. His eyes widened. "By the first hunt," he whispered. The other officers tried their portions. Soon, all 3 bowls were empty. "How?" Admiral Tar asked. "How does a human make food worthy of Valorian tastes?" Marcus stepped forward. "The same way Commander Thrax learned to cook, by being willing to try new things. By understanding that different doesn't mean weak." "Is this true, Commander?" General Varrock asked. "Has this human taught you something of value?" Thrax straightened her spine. "Sir, in my years of service, I have learned that victory comes in many forms. Sometimes through strength, sometimes through silence." She paused. "And sometimes through a shared meal." The officers conferred quietly. Finally, Admiral Tar spoke. "This situation is unprecedented. A decorated commander, compromised by cooking lessons." She almost smiled. Almost. "Yet the food is exceptional." "Perhaps," General Varrock said slowly, "there is room in our society for new approaches. After all, adaptation is strength." "A trial period," the 3rd officer suggested. "Let this establishment operate legally, under Commander Thrax's supervision. We will evaluate the results." Thrax felt relief flood through her, though she kept her expression neutral. Mostly neutral. A tiny smile escaped. After the officers left, Marcus turned to her. "Did that really just happen? Did we just win a military tribunal with Curry?" "No," Thrax corrected him. "We won because you showed them what you showed me, that joy and strength can exist together." She paused. "Also, the Curry helped." Marcus laughed, and this time, Thrax joined him. The sound of their shared laughter filled the restaurant, and for the first time, she didn't try to stop it. "You know what this means." Marcus grinned. "We can finally put up a proper sign. No more sneaking around." Thrax nodded, already thinking ahead. "But first, you must teach me how to make those dumplings again." I believe the general would enjoy them. As they headed to the kitchen together, Thrax realized that sometimes the greatest victories come not from silencing others, but from helping them find their voice and their laugh. News spread quickly through Valorian space. At first, it was just whispers. The silence bringer had been changed by a human's cooking. Then came the security footage, leaked onto the galactic network. Commander Thrax, feared warrior, laughing in a kitchen covered in flour. The restaurant was busier than ever. Today, a young Valorian cadet stood nervously at the entrance, her scales still bright with youth. "Commander Thrax," the cadet asked, seeing Thrax helping Marcus organize supplies. "Is it true what they say, that this place changed you?" Thrax looked at the cadet. A month ago, she would have sent the young warrior away with a harsh word about discipline. Now she saw something familiar in those eyes, a hunger for more than just military life. "Come," Thrax said, "help us prepare today's meals. Then judge for yourself." Marcus watched with pride as Thrax taught the cadet how to chop vegetables. More Valorians arrived throughout the day, off-duty soldiers, retired warriors, even a few civilian administrators, each one drawn by the stories they'd heard. "Your people are natural cooks," Marcus commented, watching 3 Valorian officers carefully crafting dumplings. "All that precision training really pays off in the kitchen." Thrax nodded. "We are taught to excel in all tasks, though I never expected cooking to become one of them." A commotion at the door drew their attention. A group of young Valorians had arrived, led by a familiar face, Admiral Tar's daughter. "Is it true?" the young Valorian asked excitedly. "Can you teach us to laugh?" Before Thrax could answer, Marcus accidentally dropped a pan of sauce. The resulting splash painted complex patterns across his apron, making him look like an abstract art piece. The young Valorians, to everyone's surprise, burst into laughter. The sound was unpracticed, rough, but genuine. See, Marcus grinned, not bothering to clean up yet. It's contagious. Thrax watched as her people, known across the galaxy for their stern discipline, began to change. In one corner, a veteran warrior was teaching her granddaughter how to taste test. In another, two cadets were sharing jokes they'd learned from human customers. "They're calling you something new in the fleet," the first cadet told Thrax. "They don't say Silence Bringer anymore. Now they call you Joy Bringer." Thrax felt that now familiar warmth in her chest. "Joy is not weakness," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "It is another form of strength. One I learned from a human who was brave enough to build a restaurant in restricted space." Marcus pretended to be busy with his cooking, but she could see him smiling. A message flashed on the restaurant's communication screen. More Valorian ships were approaching the sector. But unlike before, these weren't coming for inspection or punishment. "Reservations," Marcus read in disbelief. "They're making reservations. 3 battlecruiser crews want to try the nuclear fusion curry." Thrax picked up her favorite cooking knife, a gift from Marcus, and began preparing ingredients. As she worked, she heard more laughter, saw more smiles. Her people were discovering something they had denied themselves for generations. "You know what this means," Marcus said, watching the reservation list grow. "We're going to need a bigger kitchen." Thrax laughed, freely now, without hesitation. "Then we shall build one. And perhaps a school, to teach both cooking and laughter." Commander Thrax, feared warrior, wanting to open a cooking school. Marcus teased. "What would your younger self say?" She thought about it as she expertly diced vegetables. She would say it's inefficient, inappropriate, and completely against Valorian tradition. Thrax smiled. And she would be completely wrong. Outside, more ships entered orbit. Inside, more laughter filled the air. Change was coming to Valorian society, one meal and one laugh at a time. The warning came during the busiest dinner service Chen's cosmic cuisine had ever seen. Thrax was teaching a group of young Valorians how to make dumplings when her military communicator burst to life. "Commander." It was her second in command. 3 warships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're led by General Rikaz. Thrax's scales darkened. General Rikaz was the leader of the Old Guard, traditionalists who believed that Valorian culture should remain purely military. "Marcus," she called out, "clear the restaurant. Now." But before they could evacuate, the doors burst open. General Rikaz stomped in, flanked by heavily armed warriors. His scared scales and cybernetic eye made him look like a nightmare from ancient Valorian legends. "So," his voice rumbled like distant thunder, "this is where our mighty warriors come to become soft, to laugh like humans and play with food like children." The customers, a mix of Valorians, humans, and other species, froze in fear. Thrax stepped forward, positioning herself between the general and Marcus. "This establishment operates with full military approval," she stated firmly. "An approval that will be revoked," Rikaz snarled. "We are warriors, not cooks. You have infected our youth with human weakness. Look at them, smiling, laughing, forgetting our ways." A young Valorian cadet, her hands still covered in flour, spoke up. "But sir, we haven't forgotten anything. We're still strong. We just found new kinds of strength." Silence. Rikaz raised his weapon. "This ends today. Clear the building. We're destroying this place and its corrupting influence." Thrax made a decision. She picked up her cooking knife in one hand and her military badge in the other. "No," she said simply. Rikaz's cybernetic eye glowed red. "You dare defy me?" "Yes," Thrax smiled. A full, genuine smile that would have been impossible months ago. "And I'm not alone." Around the restaurant, Valorians of all ranks stood up, warriors who had learned to laugh, officers who had discovered joy, cadets who had found strength in gentleness. "Think carefully, General," Thrax continued. You see weakness. I see an entire room of warriors who are stronger because they're no longer afraid to feel joy, who fight better because they know what they're protecting. Marcus stepped up beside her, carrying his biggest cooking pot like a shield. Also, you might want to try the food before you destroy the place. It's kind of become a tradition. Tradition. Rakaz scoffed. You dare speak to me of tradition? Yes, Kathrak said, because traditions can grow, change, become better. She gestured around the room. Look at your warriors, General. Really look. Rakaz's troops were sniffing the air, distracted by the delicious smells. Some were eyeing the dumplings the cadets had made. One was actually drooling. Sir, one of his officers whispered, perhaps we should verify the corruption personally, through taste testing. A young cadet offered Rakaz a dumpling. The general stared at it like it might explode. It's not surrender, sir, Kathrak said softly. It's evolution, growth. We remain warriors, but now we're warriors who know how to live, not just fight. For a long moment, the restaurant was silent. Then, slowly, General Rakaz took the dumpling. He sniffed it suspiciously, then took a tiny bite. His cybernetic eye flickered. His scales shifted color slightly. This, he said in surprise, this is acceptable. Wait until you try the curry, Marcus grinned. The tension in the room broke. Someone laughed. A young warrior in Rakaz's own unit. And this time, no one was punished for it. Kathrax watched as Marcus began serving food to everyone, even Rakaz's troops. She kept her knife ready, just in case, but somehow she knew the real battle had already been won. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not through force, but through a perfectly made dumpling and the courage to try something new. 1 year after the confrontation with General Rakaz, Shen's cosmic cuisine had grown into something much bigger than a simple restaurant. The once restricted sector now hosted the first interstellar cultural center, with the restaurant at its heart. Thrax stood at the entrance, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Today was special, the opening of the first interstellar food festival. Her scales gleamed in the morning sunlight as she supervised the preparations. Commander, Marcus called from inside. Our special guest is arriving. Through the crowd walked General Rakaz himself. His cybernetic eye had been upgraded to show menu translations, and he wore a cooking apron over his combat armor. The sight still made Kathrak smile. General, she greeted him, ready to judge the curry competition. Indeed, Rakaz rumbled, though I still say your human's nuclear fusion curry will win. Nothing burns quite like it. Was that a hint of a smile on his scared face? Inside, the cultural center buzzed with activity. Young Valorian warriors demonstrated their cooking skills alongside chefs from 20 different species. The air filled with amazing smells and the sound of laughter, both Valorian and otherwise. Remember when you first landed here? Marcus asked, joining Thrax, ready to shut down one illegal restaurant. Thrax laughed, a sound that no longer surprised anyone. I remember thinking it would be a simple mission. Clearly, I failed completely. Best failure ever, Marcus grinned, then hurried off to prevent a young Valorian cadet from adding too much spice to their competition dish. Thrax walked through the festival, remembering how it all began. In one corner, her old cooking students were now teaching others. The nervous cadet who'd first asked for lessons was now running her own fusion restaurant on the Valorian homeworld. Even her old title had changed. These days, nobody called her the Silence Bringer anymore. Now she was known across the galaxy as the Joy Bringer, and her laugh was as famous as her fighting skills had once been. A commotion drew her attention. General Rakaz was attempting to teach a group of alien children how to make traditional Valorian war bread, but the dough had somehow ended up in his cybernetic eye. Instead of raging, he was laughing. Commander Kathrax, a young voice called. A small human girl stood nearby, holding up a datapad. Is it true you're opening cooking schools on other worlds? Yes, Cathrax nodded. The Valorian High Command has approved the cultural exchange through cuisine program. We believe that understanding comes through sharing food and joy. But you're still a warrior, right? The girl asked. Cathrax straightened to her full height. Always. But now I fight for something bigger than silence. I fight for joy, for laughter, for the right of everyone to discover their own strength, even if that strength comes from making someone smile. The festival continued around them. Humans taught Valorians about pizza. Valorians showed others their spicy combat rations. Someone had even convinced General Ricaz to judge a dessert competition. Marcus appeared again, carrying 2 bowls. Special recipe, he said, handing one to Cathrax. Remember this. Cathrax tasted it and her eyes widened. It was the curry from their first meeting, the one that had started everything. You know, Marcus said thoughtfully, when I built that illegal restaurant, I just wanted a nice view. Instead, I helped change an entire civilization. No, Cathrax corrected him. You taught one person to laugh. Everything else followed naturally. Around them, the festival bloomed with life, laughter, and love. Valorian warriors traded recipes with former enemies. Children from different worlds played together. And everywhere, people were discovering what Cathrax had learned in that small restaurant so many months ago. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in staying silent, but in learning to laugh. Sometimes the fiercest warrior isn't the one who fights the hardest, but the one who dares to show others how to find joy. And sometimes, the most powerful revolution starts with a simple bowl of curry and the courage to try something new.